Welcome everyone, I'm Pat Mitchell. Joining me, of course, as always, is Adam. We're doing a follow-up podcast here, or conversation. It's more of a conversation, that's what these are, of our talk about money the other day. And the reason for that is there was actually an interesting comment when I had posted the video on X. Well, we'll just share it. I think this is the easiest way to do it. That way I don't misinterpret or misread or misspeak. So on the post of the video here, Sam Charlton 69 writes, first he wanted to hear more about Adam. He thought Adam was more of a guest and it was an interview. Adam's a co-host. And actually I wanted to make sure, and I looked on the back end of Riverside to see how much conversation is mine, how much is his. It's actually a pretty 50-50 split. So I was happy to see that. So it was actually a 50-50 split, maybe a 60-40. I do ramble a little bit more. So I understand people do want to hear from Adam more. I get that. I do too. So anyways, Sam writes, fair enough. I found the vid through hashtags. The debt discussion is super interesting and thought there was a lot of potential to explore both sides. He goes on to write, and this is what we're going to be talking about, would be great to have a Robert Kiyosaki figure to oppose you. Now, number one, it's not necessarily about opposing. I don't disagree with the methods that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, as well as other people like him. So what we're going to be talking about is the idea of more so debt and why I take the view that I do. And Adam will definitely give me a hand with this. I've never read any of those books. I'm a pretty well-read person. That's just not my thing. I do my own thing when it comes to money. I'm about protection. I'm about always having what I have, as discussed in the last video. I don't want to ever expose myself. Now, I'm very comfortable with risk, and I want to get that out of the way. I have no problems with risk, but it's risking in a way that doesn't expose me. If you're picking up what I'm laying down, like there's different levels of exposure. When I'm behind the monitors, I'm very comfortable with being exposed because I know that I can get in and out of these trades with ease, and I trust my training and my knowledge and my competency level and my decade plus of experience in the markets to protect me. And when it comes to working with, on the other side now, just talking strictly about money, you're dealing with banks and institutions where you're not necessarily protected. It is always in their best interest, and it's very difficult to navigate those waters. Now, you can obviously become very educated, and you can read or listen to material from people like Robert Kiyosaki. They'll educate you. And I have absolutely no issues with a lot of what he is saying or other people like him. The point that I'm trying to make about this is where people like maybe Sam may miss, is there are boom and bust cycles. It's about timing. Timing's really important. The issue becomes your timing. Do you have a sense of timing? What's your risk exposure timeline? And when you get in and out, and let's say you invest into, and you get into debt, and you make 10%, 20%, 50% your money on that investment, whatever it is, and you pull it out. Okay, that worked. You've got that. Now you can get and expose yourself yet again, and you get into debt yet again, buying houses or rental properties. And that first initial investment, let's say it's still even making you money. That's great. That's perfect. Now, the second time you get into this, let's say your timing is off and now you hit a bust cycle. Well, not only do you lose all of that initial investment, right? Because it's gone. It's going to get milked away just through basic bills and basic cost of living, right? Because you need money to live. When things go bust, they go bust real quick, and there's really no way out. There's no one that's going to be able to help you out of that situation. There's no banks that are going to lend you that money. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like everything goes well until it doesn't in these situations. It's a very small portion of the population that will have that timing down, whether it be luck or through their own education or intuition or knowledge, whatever you want to call it, and they can get out at that right time, and they've protected themselves. There are layers of protection in there, and maybe Adam can give a little more insight into I guess, the general idea of Robert Kiyosaki's ideas, and then we can kind of go a little bit back and forth of the things I agree with and maybe the things that I don't necessarily agree with. Because a lot of what he says, just talking with Adam, because then again, like I've said, I've never read any of that information. So I don't want to be talking out of my ass, and I don't want to misrepresent him or myself in that matter. So maybe we'll hand it over to Adam, and he can give maybe just a very simple, quick idea of what the idea is.
Well, I think at the core of his book, and it's been a number of years that I read it, but since it's come up in this conversation, for those aren't familiar with Rich Dad Poor Dad, it is an outstanding book, and it is all about what we talk about is mentality, and the mentality of a poverty mindset versus a wealth mindset, and the analogy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and many of us have had growing up with a figure who just sees wealth as bad, rich people bad, tax the rich, penny found is a penny earned, and just the scarcity of life that is everywhere. And when we're children and we grow up around that, well, that becomes a record player in the background of our mind and our subconsciousness and our thinking. In the book, he talks about, well, he had his rich dad as well, who was a mentor to him, who taught him about wealth, who taught him about the expectancy of good things to come. And so, the book is about learning how to distinguish the two and catch ourselves when we're thinking a poverty mindset versus a more opportunity driven mindset. And he talks a lot about the differences of debt, and that there are different kinds of debt, and we can use debt as leverage to get things done, and we can use debt to destroy ourselves. Mm-hmm. We can use, and that's why debt is, I think it's misunderstood because it's the same word, but it's two extremely different things. And what Pat is bringing to the table here is that even in the best of those worlds where you might be using debt as leverage, we have situations of risk which are ultimately can be beyond our control. And are we educated to the level of the gurus? Grant Cardone is another one that talks a lot about how debt is good, and yes, in their hands it is because they're skilled masters.
Absolutely.
And the path to where they're at is, for them, is decades. And I mentioned this to Pat last night. It would be like Pat coming on camera here and say, hey, go take out a mortgage and trade with me in the morning 500 contracts and I'll make you 10 grand a day. And there's a big difference between being able to leverage millions and billions of dollars for real estate, just like there's a big difference between trading with one contract and 500 contract, and the difference is pain. And that's what I know Pat wants to dig into more is how do we can you manage the pain? Do we have the skills? Because it's so easy to get in over your head and have an ideal, and the space between the ideal and what you're capable of are two different things as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good example. We've all heard of alert services, right? That's one thing I've never, Trick Trades is not an alert service because it doesn't work. But it's very easy to sell people on the idea of an alert service. That's why these alert services do really well. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I could sell you blue sky right now. Come in, shadow my trades, take the exact same trades as me. And I'll even give you a heads up before I enter, when I'm going to exit, the whole nine. But you can't take small size. You need to trade the size that I am trading. Here's the issue. It is pain. It is mental calluses. It's mentality. It's the threshold of pain. I have an amazing threshold of pain in these positions. I can take $1 million position very easily and have a drawdown of $150,000 in a position. My pain threshold on my positions is roughly anywhere between 10 and 20% in an options trade. On $1 million position, that can be $200,000. Can you withstand that pain? Now remember, you need to take the exact same size as me. You're going to freak out. That's what I'm getting at. These people like the Cardones, the Kiyosaki's, they are masters at what they do. They can handle that pain. That pain does not affect them the same way it's going to affect you. And they've also set themselves up where, let's say a bus cycle hits, they won't be wiped out. I know that Kiyosaki is $1.2 billion in debt. And if he fails, the banks fail. Are you in that position? And that's what I'm trying to get at. People love to read stuff like this or listen to stuff like this. And they love to put themselves in the exact same position as that person. Because if he did it, I can do it. You're not built like them yet. That takes years and decades of mastery to get to that point. Look at 2008. Let's take the last big bus cycle, for example. Now, anyone that's watching this, if you didn't live through that, okay, you were too young, because obviously there's a lot of people that might be watching this that are just getting into trading and investment and this whole money mindset. They are too young to remember the pain of that year, okay, and the aftermath of it. When things are going good, so let's say 2006 that's when it really started going exponential. That was the time, and it didn't even matter what you did. Now, back then, I was a welder. I was a contract welder. I would have people run me down, try and fucking get me to pull over in my welding rig, right? Because it's a big welding rig. They obviously know I'm a contract welder. They would get me to pull over. They would be riding my ass or like getting in front of me and stomping on the brakes to get me to pull over and saying, how much are you making an hour? I'll double it. It was fucking insanity. That is a boom, ladies and gentlemen. I recognize that immediately. It's like, okay, this is the top. It's coming. And you can see the tops of these boom cycles because it gets out of control. Just like the top of the first crypto market. When you have people like Paris Hilton out there starting to like pump crypto, you know the top is in, ladies and gents. Okay? So again, that's the boom. Everything's going well. How many people out there during that, let's say, 06 timeline, 2006, were thinking it would never end because people don't want to admit that it's going to end, right? And then 08 happens. 07 even, you start getting some whiffs of like, shit's going to hit the fan here. And then 08 hits and shit does hit the fan. Man, when that happened, it didn't affect me because I wasn't exposed. I knew it was coming. Something was coming. Not exactly that, right? I wasn't that into financial markets or anything at that time. I'm just a welder. I knew something was coming though, and I protected myself. I wanted to make sure to do my best with all that money that I made in that boom to clear everything so then I don't owe anything, okay? Now, I'm not the greatest with money either, but when you see something coming, you need to start taking steps of protection. I want to make sure that I'm protected. Everyone that I know is protected. I don't want to expose my family to risk. The amount of damage that it did to people, I personally know there was someone that worked for me just with trick trades, and he was huge into rental properties. And he was fucking rolling. He had, I think, 7 or 8 properties in Vegas, rocking it, living large, man. What happened in 08? Completely went bust. And the fucked up thing is, just up until recently, he finally dug himself out. That's how long it took. So that's from 2008 until I don't know, 2019, 2018, he finally dug himself out, somewhere around there. That's fucking 10 years, man. That's a decade to dig yourself out. Do you even want to deal with that? Because it really is a matter of time. These boom and bust cycles are real. He basically even had steps in place as protection. There's not enough protection because when that money dries up, there is no money. And I think that that's something I really want to like hammer the fucking point of. Money is very difficult to come by when nobody around you has it, when there's no banks that'll lend you money, when nobody around you has money to borrow. Like, it's like when you're fucked, you're fucked. And I know a lot of people have never, you can just tell with the words that they use and the stuff that they say, they've never been in a situation where has been like no money. They may think they're broke, but they don't know what truly broke is. And once you live through that once, you're going to change your mindset. Now, I'm not saying to be afraid of money. All I'm getting at is it's about risk. You will not be able to withstand the pain when it goes bust. You won't. The majority won't. That's the reality of the situation. Period. You know, and I think that's the main point here, where what people are missing. Everything goes well until it doesn't. Even if you get in and get out, let's say it's a really long boom cycle, which we're in a super long boom cycle. This is just getting towards the end of it. It's the longest boom in like, fuck man, forever. Even with the amount of gains that you've made with what's coming, will you keep it all? Will you be all right? I'll be all right. I know I will. Why? Because I'm not exposed. There's no level of exposure that could ever hit me. And I've already set myself up. And everything I've set myself up with, nobody owns but me. Nobody can touch it. The banks can't take it. Nobody can touch it. In fact, anybody tries to take it, they're going to have 30 real fast, super fast friends of mine coming flying towards them. It won't happen. And that's what I'm getting at. It's being on a level of protection that nothing can touch you. It's a powerful feeling. You want to talk about the feeling of power and freedom? That's it right there, friends. Right? So it's not about having someone on to oppose me. There's nothing to oppose. What they're saying isn't wrong, but it's about how do you want to live? And is your soul, and I think the bigger point is here, like the bigger picture point is, why are you not content? There's a certain level of contentness that you need in life. Now, let's say my net worth is $5 million. Let's just use that as a nice round number. Do I need 10? Do I need 50? It would be nice. It'd be nice to have $50 million underneath my mattress or in the bank or in gold or whatever. However you want to hold your money, which is something that we're going to get into here in a bit. But I'm content. I don't need any more. Do you understand what I'm getting at? It's about a level of contentness. When you're only chasing money and money becomes your life, it's a soulless life, because it becomes about chasing money. That's your whole goal, is just chasing money. You should be chasing your fucking freedom, your sovereignty from everything. That's what you should be chasing, right? And that's what I was getting at, Adam, right? And I know these points sometimes, not even just of mine, just in general, and even with Kiyosaki's message, it gets lost on people. They're missing the bigger point as to what people are saying. I know the point gets missed a lot because I see comments all the time, and I'm not talking about Sam's comment. I'm just talking about just in general on social media. People miss the point because generally they don't watch. They don't really watch. They just thumb through shit, right? And I think that that's a major issue too. Like, if you're going to watch something, really listen to the words that people are saying. It's like, I know I look like just a regular guy. The fact of the matter is I'm not. I live a life that nobody lives. Like, man, I was talking to a member about this actually last night. He's come into some hard times just personally. His father got diagnosed with cancer, and he's right at the cusp of making it. And he's not willing to ever give up, but he keeps getting tested. And I can remember that towards the end where I started gaining consistency. You name it, it fucking happened. And it was just like, what is going on? Why does all of this bad stuff keep happening? And it keeps knocking me back and it's setting me back. Well, the universe or God or whatever was testing me. It was testing me to see if I was worthy of living that life. And I truly believe that. There was a test because the life that I live now, and I'm not saying this to put it in anyone's face or to be one of those guys or gloat or brag. It's not that. It's just facts. I live a life that and that's what I want for people listening to this stuff. This is why we're doing these videos, because it's achievable without exposing yourself to massive amounts of risk. There's lots of different paths that you can take in life. And I think people want the quickest path forward. And sometimes you need to stop and you really need to hit the brakes a little bit.
Well, I think, the best thing to think about here is, well, what do we do? Right? I mean, there's a lot of people aren't in your shoes. So, how do we get there? But what changes have to be made in our life if we're going to take away something from our talk today? It's like, well, if we do have a little bit of money saved away or stashed, or are saving it and are working our way out of debt or have gotten out of debt, where do you put it so it's safe, right? We don't just decide to size up now that we've saved and just put it into the market because we just when shifted one risk for another risk. We have to let that time take place. But where do you put, I don't know, 25, 50, $100,000 or more in cash? Do we leave it in the bank? Do we go buy gold, which is at all-time highs right now? Do we buy silver? Do we just put it under the mattress? What do people do that want to protect their money and reduce their risk?
So I have some really unconventional methods to hold my money, as well as unconventional thoughts. Now, in times like this, I want to give a little bit of background first before I say and show what I'm going to show. Let's say this bus cycle is the worst bus cycle in the world. I want to paint a picture of the worst scenario possible, because this is how I think. I always think in worst case scenarios, always. Okay. It's not like the best of the worst case scenarios. It's like, no, the worst case scenario. And what you're trying to do is control damage. That's it. That's all you're trying to do. That's the objective here. It's not about, let's say you go out and you buy gold with your money. We'll use that as an example for now. And you go out and you buy gold at all-time highs. See, a lot of people are looking at it in the respect of, well, that's at all-time highs. And when I really need it and everything kind of goes bust, and let's say gold goes down, I'm going to lose 30% of my money. Well, you will. But what you did do is, because all the banks are fucked. Remember, this is the worst case scenario I'm giving you. You got to keep this in mind throughout the entire time. So banks are gone. They're dusted. There's maybe one or two banks left. But
or they won't let you take your money out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Right? Like
they ask you, what you go take a little bit out. What are you using that for?
Exactly.
They're overstepping already.
Yeah. So it's going to get worse. We all know this. We know it's going to get worse when it comes to that. Banks are overreaching. Government's overreaching big time. So again, worst case scenario, you buy gold at all-time highs. You lose 30%, where you actually now you need to use that gold somehow to exchange it for goods. Well, what's worse, losing 30% or having zero? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at, Adam?
Yeah. That's a great sense.
There's a loss there, but it's not a loss. It's still a gain, kind of.
Right. Well, because
because you
the
have
alternative,
something physical and in your hand. Okay. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's
yeah,
about minimizing the damage. And I do that in my trading as well. Sometimes we get ourselves into trades where there is no way out and you're fucked. And now it's about minimizing damage. It's damage control. It's getting
yeah,
out
that's
with the least amount of damage possible, right?
because if what we're all what many of us perceive to be happening is we're headed for hard times.
Yeah,
So it would be a lie to be telling ourselves, well, I can make a move so I don't experience any damage. And
exactly.
what the reality, and that's a lie. It's like, no, the reality is there's gonna be damage.
Yep.
We're gonna take a hit, and only the select few who've been planning for this for a decade won't take a hit. But they might take a hit. What if trading ceases? So it's not about what do I do to completely avoid any loss. That's not real,
Yep.
right? It's how do I minimize the loss and accept that, and then move forward from that place of acceptance.
So let's even take the Great Depression. Do you think you could really spend gold? Did gold even really have any value?
Well, that's a great. Yeah, you got a gold bullion sitting in your closet. What are you going to do?
And let's say you
Take a
even cut it
screwdriver
into
and.
small little tiny pieces where you could buy a loaf of bread with it. Well, if
Mhm.
I'm a bread salesman, I'm a baker, and you're going to offer me gold in exchange for that. Well, no, I don't, I can't feed my family or put a roof over my head with gold. You understand? So again, we're painting the picture of worst case scenarios. So it almost becomes those sort of things become irrelevant. And what does become very relevant are skills, okay? Being able to exchange skills for goods
Mhm.
or other goods for other usable goods. Ammunition is something
Mhm.
that I do believe will have massive value in the future if the shit hits the fan. Okay. Now it's not going to have massive value, and it's not like you can just go out and buy 100 grand worth of ammo. I'm not saying do that at all. I'm just saying prepare yourself for things in that nature, right? Actually purchase things now that will hold value if a Great Depression scenario comes up, because people like to still think it's like gold is going to have value. It's like gold will hold your money. And that's where people use gold. It's not for the time of need, it's for after that time so that they
Right.
have a
Be
holding of something,
preserved.
right? Now,
Yeah.
let's say things don't quite go super bust, but the banks really overreach and they don't really allow you to take money. Maybe the dollar becomes almost worthless, right?
Mhm.
Well, there's certain things, there's certain assets, there's certain physical goods that will always hold a certain amount of money. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. And I know there's going to be some people that are absolutely going to be in the comment section saying you're out of your fucking mind. But just hear me out and think about it from a worldwide perspective where there are going to be places around the world that are going to still do a lot better and they'll be all right. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. There's just certain things like this right here. No matter what, no matter what, this will always hold a value of a minimum of $4,000 minimum. And right now it's worth about 6,200. Okay. Now that's going to fluctuate. Now I know this seems ridiculous, but just hear me out. During that last bullshit coronavirus implosion, luxury goods went through the roof. And there's a reason for that because people can hold their money there. They trust. During that time, what happened was it was interesting because a lot of people lost faith in the government and the banks immediately. Everyone had their paranoia on high. Okay.
Mhm.
This I can strap on my wrist and go anywhere in the world, and I'm carrying and holding a certain amount of money. I can get rid of this anywhere. And this is a 1986 Rolex Datejust. It's nothing special, right? Not to mention there is solid gold on this as well. that you could piece out if gold still became or had value. Okay. And that's just a fact. So that right there is 4 to 6 grand. This here is 10 grand all day long, no matter where you are on the planet. Do you understand what I'm getting at? And I can strap this, that, and one more on my wrist, and I have the ability to exchange that for money anywhere in the world. Anywhere. It holds value anywhere. This will always have value. Now, I'm not talking just watches in general. I'm talking Rolex basic models. Okay. Now, I'm not saying to go out and put all your money in watches. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying having assets, just bulk, different classes of assets that will always hold money no matter what happens. There's very few things on the planet that do this. And this is what I need you to see through the physical watch. This is what I need you to do, because it's not about the physical watch. It's about an asset that will always hold a certain amount of value. Always will. Always, no matter what. Now, gold's going to fluctuate. These may fluctuate, but it's about damage control. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that, you know what I'm getting at, Adam? I know it seems silly. I know it does.
Can you fill in a gap for me, though? Because
Yep.
This is all new to me. So I've got 3 watches on my wrist.
Yep.
Everything you're saying pans out.
And your ankles. Remember, you got to
For
load
my
them up.
ankles, yeah. So walking around like planking around. So then what happens next? Like you're saying you can exchange this for anywhere in the world, but if gold is basically worthless because, you know, the bread guy needs ammo.
No. I'm not saying this in the worst case scenario. No, I got past that. If you actually listen, I said, okay, this is not worst case scenario. No. Worst case scenario, this shit ain't worth anything either. What the fuck do I need to watch for? Yes. No.
So, I mean, do we go to just a jeweler or a pawn shop, or
jeweler,
where
pawn
does
shop,
this transaction happen?
Yeah, jeweler, pawn shop, private, and you'll be able to. Like a lot of people, like there's always another side to my watch collection. I know no matter what, I've got over $1 million in watches that will hold that value. I don't buy pieces that are going to depreciate 50%. A lot of people do. They buy hype pieces that will depreciate. This will always be worth plus or minus $900,000 to $1.2 million, right? And this, now we're not talking worst case scenario at all. This is not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm talking about having holdings, some sort of holdings that are outside of the bank. Like, where do you put your money? Honestly, where do you put your money? What are you going to do? Put it in your fucking mattress? You know what I mean? Like, empires fall, right? If we want to start going down that road, and that's probably a discussion for another time, but it's relevant to this. If empires fall, and let's say the American empire is about to fall, the US dollar will fall. So if you're holding all of your money in US dollars, is that a wise idea? I don't think so. If you have $100,000 in US dollars and it loses 80% of its value, you're left with 20. That's not good. What I'm getting at is having holdings or assets that are universal. Watches they truly are one. And I know it's hard maybe for some of you watching that have no idea about watches or timepieces or anything like that. They are universal. It's universal currency is what it is. That's what it is. It's not a watch. You need to wrap your head around the fact that it isn't a watch. It's universal currency is what it is. And there are certain pieces, the ones I showed you, plus this one here, the Rolex Pepsi, this will always hold a certain amount of value. No matter what, this will be 20 grand all day long on a retail scale, right? And even if it went back to retail, it's still 12 grand all day long. Everywhere around the planet is what I'm getting at. It's not the watch. What I'm showing you is universal currency. And this is the type of stuff that where you need to think and put your money. Now, I'm not saying if this is like you know nothing about that and that makes you really nervous, then don't do that. I need you to think for yourself and think about universal currency. What is universal? Well, gold and silver is universal. Now, again, we're beyond the part where it's worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing in a worst case scenario is other usable goods or skills. That's it. Full stop, period. That's all there is. You can only start, like, if you have land, grow your own crops, right? Maybe make your own ammo. Have a fucking, use something that's common. Make 9 mil and whatever, 30 odd
Yeah.
sticks, right? That's what I'm getting at. That's worst case scenario. And again, I cannot stress the fact, don't get caught up on watches. I'm not telling you put all your fucking money in watches. This is not what I'm telling you to do. I'm talking about universal goods.
It holds value. It
Yeah.
holds value.
Yeah, it does. And like I said, no matter what, that's the price of those. No matter what, you're going to have to withstand pain. Okay. There's ways to hold your money as well to withstand pain. And the only true way of doing that is through precious metals. It really is. I know people will debate that. I know they will. At the end of the day, precious metals will always be used and be valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those precious metals during an absolute bust, worst case scenario, will hold a zero value at that time. It just will, right? So the world has gone bust. You have a bunch of gold bullion. It's worthless. It's not about that moment. Where people need to start thinking, they need to start thinking miles ahead, years ahead. So let's say it takes 5 years to get out of this worst case scenario. 10 years, whatever it is, whatever it takes. During that time, it is only going to be skills and exchangeable goods. That's it. That's it. When you get out of that is where you have your holdings to rebuild. You need to withstand the pain of that. And then when you come out, now you resurface with this. I'm exchanging this for whatever currency is now replaced the US dollar or whatever. And that's what it is, because that's how I think. I don't think in short term at all. I think long term. What do I need to do to get me out of this now? I'm going to have to embrace the suck for the next 5 to 10 years. And then after that, I can emerge and rebuild, because there is no rebuilding during that time. It's just suck, right?
Survive.
Yeah, it's survival. That's all it is. And again, now we're back to that worst case scenario, right? So I know we're bouncing around between worst case scenarios and non-worst case scenarios, but that's what it is. And maybe it's a scenario where it ain't that bad. It's a little bit of a dip, right? Regardless, you need some sort of holdings. And for that time, yes, there is going to be some level of a survival mode happening. It's about setting yourself up now. And there's a lot of people out there that are not going to have the means. And I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't have a solution for an impossible problem.
Well, if you are a person who doesn't have a means, this is just a Tony Robbins statement that everyone's heard. It's like, you have to take massive action.
Oh, totally.
It's
yes.
simple as that. It's like, if you're in that situation, we always have an option.
Yes.
We might not want to see the option. We might not want to admit it, but if you are in that, I had to take massive action. We had to fundamentally alter everything we were doing in our life, how we were living, how we thought about money, how we thought about how we spent our time. What were our interests? Where we put our mental focus? We had to change everything. And I know, Pat, you've even said, I'm a completely different human being than I was. I wouldn't recognize myself.
Yeah, no.
Right. From your earlier years. And you have to become the person who won't recognize you who you are today. So there's never a hopeless situation.
No.
And the second we decide, I'm not going to be in this hopeless situation, I'm hearing what not only us, turn on any YouTube video and click on it, and you'll have 1,000 videos talking about exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This isn't groundbreaking in any way.
No,
it's everywhere.
This
for people who are paying attention.
Yeah.
So there's something you can do, or you haven't done it and you should have when you knew you should have, but that just means it's about minimizing damage. Take the loss.
Yeah.
Dump the home you're underwater in,
yeah.
Size down, get rid of the cars, size down, and then fix things. right? We always have a choice.
Yeah, right now, this is where people should be doing damage control. If you can't see something's coming, man, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be the guy to tell you everything's going to be all right, because it isn't. Things are going to get rough for a lot of people. But there are things that you can do right now. See, again, and it boils down to going back to the original part, what we were talking about in this, where if I had to guess, I would believe that Sam is probably someone that has not lived through a bus cycle. And there's a lot of people out there, and that's not his fault. It's a matter of timing and age and everything else. But listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth when I'm saying prepare. It's not a conspiracy theory. That's not tinfoil hat shit. It's coming. The top we're over the top. High water mark was fucking long ago, man. We're already on the downswing. So there's still time. Now's the time, like Adam said, if you're in a house that you can barely afford, get out. Sometimes we need to eat that loss, right? Get out, downsize, live within your means, man. Own. You need to own. You do not need to be in a situation where you are at the bank's mercy for what's coming, because they will take it. They will. They're going to. There is a massive land grab. That's provable. That's tangible. We can all see it. There's a land grab. There's a house grab. There's a reason why BlackRock and Vanguard are buying up all of these houses. It's like, oh man, I went to sell my house and there was a bunch of cash buyers and they got into a big bidding war over it. Yeah, who do you think that is? Do you think those are just like fucking people? No, they're entities. They are institutions. It tells you something is up, right? And it's like, again, that's not tinfoil hat shit. That's facts. We can see it going on. And if you just don't want to admit it for comfortability, it makes you uncomfortable, well, then you're going to be really uncomfortable for what could potentially happen here, right? So prepare for it. If we know what's coming, it's about preparation, no different than when we're behind the screens. Prepare. Just prepare. Downsize. Live within your means. Get rid of all the shit that you don't need and be content. I think that that's like even a bigger point that I kind of brushed over. Talked about it for a couple of minutes and that was it. Like, and it needs way more time than that. Being content, living within your means is something that's so important. Why do you need all this shit? Right? Like, why do you need to expose yourself for risk for things that don't matter? Because they don't matter. Like our last conversation with Adam and his 650. Why? Right? Like it's unnecessary. Be content. I would be willing to bet, Adam, that you are probably 1,000% happier, aren't you?
Oh, a million.
There you
go. I'm disgusted.
Yeah.
At that. Why was I playing those mental games with myself?
Yeah.
Of thinking I need those kinds of nice things, especially when they weren't earned. You know, it's like, why is my attention even there? It's because you're so wrapped up in this image, the me show, right? The me show, that you completely are oblivious to your future and what you're doing to your future. Yep. And then the piper's gonna come, right? You got to pay sooner or later.
Yep.
It always comes, and it's like, why give up your freedom like that for just the vanity of it?
Yeah, be in a position where the piper owes you fucking money. That's the way I look at it, and that's how I live my life, man. And that's why I said all the things that I said in the last episode. That piper's gonna owe me. I'm not gonna owe him. And that's straight facts. I don't, and I know I've said it a million times, I don't owe anybody anything. Anything I own. There's a difference. And that's how I choose to live my life. Could I acquire way more wealth if I got myself into debt and I used debt in the proper manner? Absolutely. I would be rolling. I always said if I ever made money, that's what I'm going to do. But now that I have it, fuck that, man. I'm content.
There's a cost.
There is a cost.
There's always a cost. And you might tell, I mean, that's just only when you're on out of it can you really reflect with the perspective,
Yeah.
just to see how damaging it is, because it occupies your mind,
Yep.
in your subconscious, in the back of your mind, and it affects your decisions, affects your happiness,
Mm-hmm.
your sense of self and your identity. I mean, it eats at you. And the worst part is you're never accounting for the unexpected things, right? And you think that you're covering your monthly costs, but then you're never thinking about having an unexpected doctor visit or a friend or a loved one in need. And you're always the person that can't be there for anybody because you've already overextended yourself and you haven't planned for that. And then you take that hit, and then your only choice is to put that on the credit card. And then you just slowly slip down this hill that you can't ever get out of,
Yeah.
until finally you wake up and it's like, I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. It feels impossible to get out of, but you can get out of it. Just
Yeah.
like Adam and Jen got out of it. Like they're doing, like you said, a million times happier. And that's what it's about. It's about happiness. Don't sell short the word happiness and what it actually means. And that's, again, how I choose to live my life. It's happiness and freedom,
Yeah.
above all else. Yeah, you can. You can amass more wealth. You absolutely can. There's no problem there. You can do that until you
I
can't.
mean, we have, one of our chickens just laid eggs, and we have little chicks popping out right now.
Yeah.
That's happiness.
Yes,
Seeing
it
little
is.
chickens jumping up on mama's back.
Yep.
The happiness of that compared to the fake happiness of, and don't get me wrong, a nice car is a nice car.
Yeah.
There's happiness there.
Oh, there is.
But the chickens are ours. We love them. It's having those things when you owe debt on them, and so comparing the fake happiness, if I could walk out and pay cash for it, yeah, go for it. That's
Mhm.
earned. But
Yeah.
just having, there's something, this thing, we can find happiness in the smallest things. And, whether it is just chickens or growing a plant in your house or making something or, having a hobby. I mean, there's so many ways to find happiness that don't cost anything.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that lasts.
Yeah. And I do want to make the distinction too, like, and I believe Sam there, to jump back to Sam, like, I don't think he's talking about debt in the bad debt way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but that's what he kind of missed. He missed the bigger point as to what we were talking about in the first episode in
Maybe,
this, I
yeah.
guess, 2-part series. And there's probably going to be a 3-part on this. But in this, where it's like we were talking solely about bad debt. And I was also talking about good debt too, because to me, debt's debt, man. When push comes to shove, someone needs to collect that debt.
That's true.
And that's it. That's what it boils down to. And I don't want to ever put myself or my family, even bigger, my family, in that position where they're going to suffer because of my greed, because that's what it is. It boils down to greed and not being content. Again, we can all amass way more wealth very easily through debt. Do you need to do that? It's about being content. Build yourself up to a point where you can buy everything cash. It's not like it took me overnight to just go out and buy this house cash and buy all the properties I have cash. It doesn't work that way. It took work, but I earned it. And again, there's a special feeling to this house that we're having another house built up in the mountains right now. And I don't even know if I want to sell this house because I don't fucking have to. Do you know what I mean? Like, this was a purchase where it's like I bought it cash without even thinking about it. And I love that idea. I'm attached to it in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, it's earn it. When something's earned, it means something. And I think that that's the bigger point and the bigger picture play here that we were getting at with last episode. And that's what I got to say on the matter, Adam. You got anything to add?
No, love it. I learned a lot today, got some good things to think about, and just in regard to what we can do now that we are in a state of growth. What can we do to preserve that growth? So I really appreciate your insights.
I would like to do maybe more on things that we can do to prepare and like what actually we can do. Like, this is just a little impromptu little visual of, you know, universal goods, right, that we can use to exchange. It's like, again, and I know for a fact people are going to get caught up on the actual physical watch. That's what they're going to get caught up on, or caught up on. And it's not a watch that is universal, right? And that's where where people need to start thinking bigger. They just need to think outside of the box. What can I use? What can I have that has universal value? And because that's what's going to matter in times where money fails, or a certain dollar fails, a country's dollar, right? We see it coming. Everyone's already going over to BRICS. And it's like, maybe we start pulling some of our US dollars into those dollars, right? You know what I mean? And nobody wants to do it because it's going to be based off of a dollar of a country that you don't like. Well, financial preservation is financial preservation, period. So it's not a bad thing to take even 20% of what you have and put it into that. At least you'll have 20% of it. If it makes you uncomfortable to put 50%, 70%, 100% of your wealth that you've amassed into that country's dollar, right? I get it. Don't do it then. If it makes you that uncomfortable, don't do it, because you'll never be able to withstand the pain when shit hits the fan. But maybe 10%, maybe 20%, at least you'll have that, right? And it's about hedging. You know what I mean? Like, there's hedges that we can do. And I would like to do another follow-up video of ways that we can hedge, because that's kind of what we do. I have all sorts of hedges out there that are interesting, and it's different, and it's not something you've probably heard people talk about. Because again, I do things very differently. I just do shit my way, and that's it. My way has served me well for the last 43 years of my life. I'm going to continue doing it without following anyone else's guidance or whatever. Could I be more wealthy? Yes, but am I very comfortable? Absolutely. So,
well, and you're happy.
Very happy.
You know, that's what's the end. That's the end game, right? So
exactly. I think we're going to wrap this one up, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope, Sam, you appreciate the little back and forth that we had. It would be nice to, talk to you maybe a little bit more. Hey, maybe you can even come on Fallout Shelter here, and we can go back and forth and have you on in a discussion about, wealth and why some of that type of thought is flawed. It's not flawed in general. In practice, it works. But just in the bigger picture, this is how and why I'm trying to do these videos with Adam, is to get people to think a little bigger, think a little longer term. This is what we're trying to do. This isn't short-term thinking at all. This is very long-term. It's about your entire life, your family's life, right? And that's why we say the things we're saying. And I think some people sometimes take it from a very short time frame, and they're missing the longer time frame as to how we're actually speaking. So thanks, Adam. Have a great day.
Thanks, man.
We will see you guys on the next one. Adios.